Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we've seen Ma, which is a Blumhouse film, horror, which I was really looking forward to from the trailer. What about you?
Not really. I mean, I love Octavia Spencer, so I thought I should see it. And, you know, horror is probably the genre that my students like best, so I always feel I need to be informed about it. Okay. But, you know, I don't particularly like horror.
Well, you have an interesting sort of attitude to horror because you constantly say, I don't like being scared, but they are the films that recently I think you've been very interested in.
Yes, I mean, I think it's the genre that has the most interesting things to say about the culture that they're made in. They're often very critical and they often deal with very serious issues and so on. And they're very good, right? Like, I think it's one of the most interesting genres at the moment. I just don't like, the gory. I don't like being scared. Yeah. Well, and I'm very, as you know, very easily scared. Yes. I jump all the time.
There's one particular jump in this which really got you. So Ma is from the trailer. I really like the look of it. So it was Octavia Spencer as this kind of lonely, seemingly woman. It's a little bit like something like Cyrus, which I don't know if you've seen.
No.
Where it's a kind of sort of friendly loner, or like the Cable Guy kind of thing, like someone who wants to be your friend, but it's actually deeply creepy,
Yeah.
And that's what she is. She befriends this group of teenagers in this small town in America, gives them somewhere to drink. She lets them use her basement, things like that. But she's a bit too friendly, and you're not quite sure what's going on. And that's the kind of spoiler-free premise.
Yes.
To go into the actual details of what happens. It transpires that there's a kind of a generational story. That all these kids are the children of people that she went to school with, and there is something that happened to her in her past, which all the parents did when they were at school. That she's held onto a grudge band for a very long time, and she starts to see a way of getting revenge. Something like that. It's not. She doesn't seem to have a plan really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's backtrack, because in a way I think the plot is the least interesting thing about this film, and in fact I think it's its greatest weakness, because I think it's kind of dumb, basically. Right. So it's kind of an excuse, a poor one, around which to hang certain really interesting things, I think. So for me the film stands out for two reasons, really. It inverts. I think it inverts the genre, right? So it's not Freddy Krueger, it's Ma, right? It's a film that really focuses on women. I think almost all the most prominent characters in the film are women. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Juliette Lewis character, Ma herself, the girls, the daughters. It's very interesting.
The boys are more peripheral.
The boys are more peripheral. And actually, I think very interestingly, the boys are also the object of desire. I mean, kind of the boys in this film are sexualized in a way that the women aren't.
That's very true.
Which is very interesting. There is almost like I wouldn't say a final boy, yeah, but the young girl is the heroine, and it's the young women who rescue everybody at the end, and kind of Ma ends up with her object of desire now dead and completely victimized by her, which is Luke Evans. Yeah. So I think it's a weirdly interesting film.
It is interesting. I wasn't crazy though about how it was kind of visualized and shot and edited and things like that. I think there's the occasional shot which is quite interesting to look at, but for the most part, it really looks like a film that is shot cheaply and quickly.
It's very interesting. I do know what you mean, but there were moments where you think, oh wow, that's amazing. So, there was the split diopter shot with
Ma in the foreground, behind a wall, listening to the characters in the background.
That's right, and everything in focus. And I thought, oh wow, that's wonderful. Yeah, but it's true there wasn't very much of that.
But maybe that's kind of a nitpick, because I do feel like it's a film that through the way it's made, and actually through some of the writing things as well, doesn't make enough of its premise. I think the idea behind it, the idea behind the story as well, though you kind of decry the plot for not being very interesting. I think there is something interesting in it that is not quite made enough of. This kind of generational sort of thing of the children, in a sense, being made to pay for the sins of their parents, kind of thing, could be much more interesting than it is made of.
I think it's a stupid premise. I mean, I think, the idea that somebody humiliated in high school ends up kind of becoming completely demented as a result of it, and, commits all of these crimes, is to me banal. I mean, everybody's traumatized by high school.
It's quite a severe humiliation, though, and a sexual abuse as well. She is lured into a closet, the janitor's closet at school, with this note from Ben, who is the Luke Evans character.
I know.
Saying, meet me in the closet.
I know, but
and then everyone's there to watch her as it's revealed that she was not with the guy she thought she was. That's severe.
But it's severe, but it's also, if you're going to do it, you have to do something more interesting than this. I mean, the film that most closely comes to mind in relation to this is Carrie, right? Which is about high school, and it's about outsiders, it's about humiliation. But my God, that film is like kind of truly terrifying, and it does so much else in terms of mother-daughter relationships, and and the high school. I mean, I think it's just banal. Really.
I agree that it's not good enough, but I think but there is something and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like there is something in the premise that is not made enough of, but I do still think it's an interesting idea. And it comes through kind of in part, like for instance, the characterization of Ma is, you describe her as demented, and it's not entirely true, because she is someone who is in control of her actions and understands her own trauma. Do you know what I mean? It's not like she's just been turned mental by what happened. She is kind of in control of herself and has a purpose to what she's doing.
Well,
and understands how she's taking it out on people.
But she's also nuts. I mean, so when you say she's in control of herself, actually the most interesting moments in the film is when she's not. When she slaps them, right? She loses control at the party in the house. Or when all of a sudden, kind of in the supermarket, she goes nuts. Or when she runs the woman over in her car. I mean, come on, she's out of control. That's the whole point. What she's doing to her daughter, so is wanting to have control, but really not having it. And I think, that her situation at work is exactly that. It's kind of, I mean, she's never in control of her own destiny. There's always a boss, kind of bringing her out of her reverie, which she's very resentful of. So I think she would like to have control, but I don't think she has it, And really, I think the most interesting moments are when she loses it, the bit with the gun, right? Yeah, which is kind of, when she makes the boy undress.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's always this recovery. Haha, just kidding. I'm not really this crazy. But the way that the film shows it to you is, she does cross a line. Anyway, for me, she is fantastic, Octavia Spencer. The film is built around her. It's a vehicle for her. Looking at the director's biography, you can see, that, I mean, he was kind of responsible for, her career in a way, right? Like with the help, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that, that she's got a vehicle built around her, and she earns it. She's fantastic. She gets laughs, right? Like kind of, almost every gesture or look, like it's just terrific, really, But the film is kind of unworthy of her.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And in a sense, I wish she had more to do. Yeah. Which sounds like, it sounds like I'm saying she has nothing to do, but she doesn't. But I kind of feel like I wanted even more.
I think it's a really interesting film because, I wasn't aware. So the whole publicity has been around Octavia Spencer. But it really has an incredibly starry cast. Or, maybe stars from yesterday. But for example, as soon as Juliette Lewis appeared on screen, it just made me so happy.
I know, I could hear.
Yes, I know.
Juliette Lewis.
I know, and actually the thing is, when she was at the height of her career, I didn't particularly like her that much. I mean, I found her too mannered. But actually there's something about the way that she looks now. She looks her age, and she looks lived in, and also, she was also able to kind of, get effects with almost every gesture, right? And kind of, she's really, really good. She's terrific. I mean, just the way that she looks at her daughter, often the way after she's turned away, right? Kind of, you know, she's an actress who knows how to make the most of her moments. And it was a joy watching her, actually. I also was surprised to see Alison Janney as the vet, right? You know, kind of, she's very mean and very sharp. I think they could have done more with the image of her, you know, where she's jailed in the kennel. And I think that was worthy of a more symbolic and significant image than the film gives her. It's a tiny part. Again, I think she's very good, if less starry in it. And again, I was completely surprised to see Luke Evans in it, really.
Another one of your little explosions. Ooh, Luke Evans.
I know, well, they're not in the poster, so it was like literally a surprise, right? Yeah. So that was all kind of... I thought it was a joy to watch them. The kids were all incredibly good as well, I must say. Like, this is a director who's very, very good with actors. I really couldn't fault anyone. But I was a bit bored halfway through the film,
Okay.
Yes.
I never got bored. I must say, I was engaged all the way through, although I was kind of thinking this is a very middle level sort of... It's the whole way through I'm going, I'm enjoying this right now, and I will forget it straight away once it's done.
Well, actually, it's interesting because I was quite bored throughout, and then when I began kind of thinking a little bit about it, it kind of, in a way, became more interesting. But I suppose that's the difference between intentions, you know, and results. Because I do think that, like, you know, centering it all on women is really interesting. Making the men the cause of the humiliation, which often in horror films it's the women who causes the male humiliation, and therefore he becomes Freddy Krueger or something like that, right? You know, I thought that was interesting. Making the men the objects of desire. I mean, you know, they are actually spectacularized, right? So, you know, that thing of where Ma, you know, points the gun and asks the guy to take his clothes off, and you go, oh, hello, what a body, right? Like, the camera is making you look at that body in a particular way. And then with Luke Evans kind of tied to the bed, right? And completely at Ma's mercy. It's kind of...
And it doesn't quite... I mean, it doesn't show you a kind of full-on nudity, but there's a point where she
grabs his cock and you see it.
Yeah, she grabs his cock, and you do see it, and she's kind of debating whether, oh, should I cut it off or should I not?
I know.
And I knew that a moment was coming when the scene started, really. Yeah. But I didn't expect it to be quite so graphic. And it's not like graphic, it's not like full frontal straight on, but it's a moment and you see some flesh.
Yeah, well, you see a penis.
Yeah, exactly.
So, which then I thought, and this is maybe part of the problem with the film, right? Because it's not brave enough, and then it somehow exceeds the norms as well. So it's a combination of, you know, two extremes. Because why have that towel around Luke Evans' crotch? I mean, he's supposed to be a prisoner, right? And I'm not saying show him full frontal, but actually, you know, there are more striking, imaginative, symbolic, sexy ways of showing him tied to the bed than just to, like, drape a towel over his riff. Like, you know, the serial killer mom, you know, is going to care to put a towel.
There were things that struck me as artificial for the sake of getting a different certificate, because it's not an 18, it's a 15.
Right.
You know, and were the film more explicit?
It would have, yeah.
Because actually later on in that scene where she slits his wrist,
yes,
it cuts very quickly, and I really noticed it cuts from kind of her face to his face, and you don't see very much of you don't see very much blood, basically.
Yeah.
It cuts away from it quite quickly, and I thought, you know, that strikes me as editing around something.
Yeah, that around the rating
that will make it make it a high rating. Yeah. And but Blumhouse is not a company that strikes me as it's not a company that strikes me as one that would do that. Like, they tend to be, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. Like, you know, you get these smaller sort of production companies these days, like Annapurna or A24, that kind of, they're making these slightly lower budget movies that seem to give the people behind them a lot more freedom creatively. Like, this is a film that cost $5 million. Horror is as cheap as it gets.
Really? This cost with this cast, it cost $5 million?
Yeah. That's
oh my God, so they must all have a back-end deal for sure then.
Well, I don't know, but that's the figure that I read. And so you just kind of, you feel like there should have been the freedom to make those decisions. I don't know why they would have restricted certain things.
Yes.
For the right, I don't know.
I think it was a mistake, and maybe the budget came into it as well. I thought the scenes where she has all the teenagers captured and chained into dog collars, I mean, again, you know, it's just so visually uninteresting. Like, you know, when you think of what could have been done with that, both in terms of creating tension, you know, in terms of making it creepy, but also, you know, kind of doing something kind of visually dazzling with that, right? Yeah. It's like all the elements are there. And, you know, the film is like as if I would have shot it in my living room with a wide-angle lens and, you know, no point of view on it. It's just, it's banal looking, actually, all those things. Yeah. All those scenes in the basement.
That's what I mean when I say it looks like it was shot quickly.
Yeah.
Do you know,
okay, I see now, I get it. So, and I did find it boring, you know, in the sense that I thought, well, you know, it's a horror film. Like, when's the killing going to begin? And, you know, kind of, I think the film is almost over before something really happens.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on what your expectations are, because I suppose when you see a film with a load of teenagers drinking, you're like, well, all these guys are going to die. That's how these films go. And I was pleasantly surprised as the film developed that it was actually it was more psychological. And it was more, it was about Ma and her past and the idea of, as I say, that the paying for the sins or whatever. So the idea that it wouldn't actually necessarily be about picking off these kids like a Freddy Krueger or like a Jason Voorhees, I didn't mind. But on the other hand, it wasn't psychologically creepy enough. Like there wasn't enough tension.
No, and actually the thing is that it's all about Ma, but it's all about Ma as a series of effects. Because actually you really find out very little about her. You know, you don't know anything about her childhood. You know, you don't know how she got pregnant and had a child. You don't know what happened to the husband.
Yeah.
You know, you have a vague sense that she's poisoning her child to keep her at home and keep her safe from the bullying she endured. But actually, there also seems to be more than that that's not explained.
Yeah, they put this Munchausen's by proxy thing going on with her daughter, where her daughter can clearly walk, and you see her doing so, but she keeps her drugged and keeps her away from school. But again, yeah, you're right. It's like, is she protecting her? What does she fear? Is she getting something out of it?
Yes.
It leaves you with loads of questions. That
that are unresolved. So it's not a very good film.
Would it surprise you to learn that the director's gay?
No, not at all. In fact, I deduced that. You know, I think the look on the men and the look on the women, you know, to me suggests a kind of a queer perspective, you know. And actually I think the film does all kinds of interesting things. I mean, you know, this is kind of a vehicle for a middle-aged, you know, black actress, right? You know, so that's already interesting. You know, and then kind of making all of the women significant, you know, and having the men as the objects of desire and trauma, you know, and then also kind of, you never see a woman undressed throughout, and you see, you know, kind of
a cock.
You see, yes, and two men kind of like, you know, splayed out for you to look at.
Yeah.
So to me, it was very clearly, you know, I mean, I could imagine, I suppose, as well. I wouldn't have been surprised had a woman directed it, because I actually went in knowing nothing about this.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't surprise me that it's a gay director. No. And I think it's a gay director who's trying to do interesting things.
Yeah, exactly.
That don't work out.
Yeah, there is. I think you're right. I mean, I haven't really picked up on that, but you're absolutely right. And I think it is the most interesting thing about the film, that it basically switches the perspective.
Yes.
From what you would kind of expect, you know. So I remember, was it the cabin in the woods where, it was obviously all the kids go to the woods and they stay in that cabin, and they're getting drunk and stuff, but as I recall it, they kind of don't really behave irresponsibly. Like they kind of, like rather than going off and having sex, like the one boy's like, no, you're too drunk or something like that. Like there was a kind of twist, I think, going on in there about sort of these kids actually being nice people.
Yeah.
The idea, like in horror, you're supposed to be arseholes and that's why you all die. You get punished for drinking.
I don't remember it too well. I remember liking it very much, actually.
Yeah, it was a fun movie.
And actually, I'd like to revisit that. And actually, one of the things that this film makes me want to do is to revisit The Girl on the Train, because I remember really hating The Help, right? And I thought The Help was so super schmaltzy.
These are all films directed by the same guy. Tate Taylor is his name.
The Help was a big hit, but I thought it was schlocky and emotionally manipulative and so on. The Girl on the Train I thought was really good.
I like that film a lot, yeah.
So he's an interesting director, actually. And seeing this film, even though it's not very well realized, really makes me want to revisit The Girl on the Train again. Because, and really, like, he is terrific with actors, because the actors were the best thing about The Help. And Emily Blunt was fantastic in The Girl on the Train. And now, because this is a really great performance, I think, from not only Octavia, but also Juliette Lewis, and the young girl whose name is...
Diana Silvers.
She's wonderful.
Yes, Diana Silvers. Who was in... She was in...
And Michaeli Miller was also very good. Both of them were really, really good.
Oh, the friend, yeah.
Yeah.
Diana Silvers was the girl in Booksmart.
Oh, right.
The other girl
fantastic.
Gets together with.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
She's very good. She's very striking as well, you recognise.
She's very beautiful. Though she's beautiful in a way that can pass for ordinary, which is very interesting. She's got she's got a little bit of an Audrey Hepburn thing, and also her eyes are big like Anne Hathaway's, except she's like really tall and slim, and kind of
like a newborn baby deer that's just learning how to walk.
Yes, there's something about that, isn't there?
But it's funny because Ma at one point says in the film, when she's waking up, I can feel those doe eyes staring at me. And you're like, fucking right, they are doe eyes.
Anyway, so do you recommend it?
I kind of recommend it. I think, you picked up on a very good reason, which I hadn't at all really, until you articulated it really well, about the film's inversion of certain tropes and the privileging of women and the kind of the look, the way men's bodies are shown, that sort of thing. I think that is really interesting, and I suppose I took that for granted. Didn't notice it until you pointed it out, which is great. It's not well dramatised enough though overall, despite some really good performances, and I think an interesting premise, despite how banal it may come across to you. Yes. I liked that sort of I like the idea of this kind of this generational, like, these kids have done nothing wrong,
yes.
but they're going to be punished because of what their parents did.
Yes.
For this age old grudge. I kind of like that, although it is ultimately not realised well enough.
Yes,
and I don't think I'll watch it again. I don't think I'll remember it that well.
No, it's not very well written. I think the structure of the film is off. I think it is a problem in a horror film. And in a film that's advertised and billed as a horror film, to have nothing scary until pretty much the last 20 minutes.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
just not scary.
So that's a problem, just structurally. And I think some of the reversals that it just doesn't do them well enough. So the scene where Luke Evans, goes to meet Ma for a beer, right? And then there's a twist on your expectations. It's just not strong enough.
Yeah. Yeah, there are moments in scenes where you can imagine how they could have been made more tense, more meaningful, bit of music coming in, something like that, or a moment being held, something like that are actually just quite blank in their execution.
Yes, which
is a problem, and it's a shame.
Yes,
So it's a film that doesn't. It has the potential in here which is unrealised.
Yes,
I think.
But
but it's still fun. I had a good time throughout.
Yeah. Well, almost. I would still recommend it. Just because it's so wonderful to see Juliette Lewis be wonderful in a film. Aside from everything else, I suppose kind of people of my generation carry these expectations. She was like a young hot star, I suppose. Of the early 90s. I think she first came to attention in the Martin Scorsese film with De Niro and Nick Nolte. Jessica Lange played the mother. Fear.
Cape Fear.
Cape Fear, yeah. She was the young girl in Cape Fear. And then, obviously, she's very, very memorable in Catherine Bigelow's Strange Days. And of course...
Natural Born Killers,
right? So she's kind of iconic, really, of a period. But she was also somebody that seemed to go off the rails. And, you would have expected, like, I don't know, kind of punk and drugs to have, like, killed her by now, right? So it really is, like, a pleasure to see her. And to see her be so good, to see her kind of look her age and be so good. So to me, that's a reason to see it. That was just a pleasure to see it. And then actually, I think Octavia Spencer is truly great. And I'm really glad that someone like her is getting roles like this.
Yeah, I mean, that was the central draw for me right from the start, right from the trailer, just Octavia Spencer as a horror villain. Yes. Fantastic. Like, what could possibly go wrong here?
Yes.
And she was wonderful.
And she makes the film, I mean, it's hard to imagine the film without her.
Yeah,
actually.
Absolutely, yeah.
So she is that important. So, kind of, people who admire her, I mean, this is a must-see film, really. So that's all.
Yeah. Good news for Octavia Spencer and Juliette Lewis fans.
That's right.
So, it's quite good.
Righto. Well,
go on. We are eavesdropping at the movies.
Yes, and we are on
iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, and on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com. Full list of all the podcasts.
Yes, I think we are going to see Maradona next.
Seeing that on Thursday.
So kind of tune in for that, because kind of Mike is an expert. So
am I?
Well, I think so. I think you know your football.
Well, yes, I suppose I know more football. Well, I know more football than I do F1. I wasn't a huge fan of Senna, which is by the same
director. I've seen that, and I've seen Amy. So you can be informed in one way. Oh, see Amy! It's a wonderful documentary, and you'd like it.
What's about Amy Winehouse?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
don't know much about her either.
Oh well, then she's absolutely fantastic, and it's a great documentary as well.
Okay. Well, so I'll watch that in the next couple of days.
Righto.
Do my research.
Okay.
Because there's nothing we like more than planning ahead and doing homework.
Yeah. You will love Amy.
Well, let's hope so. I hope I like it more than Senna.
Yes.
Which I wasn't
going
to.
Well, you will.
Anyway, right. That's for Thursday.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.